Today we'll be learning quadratic equations. Now let's dive in. So when I say quadratic equation, with the first word quadratic, when you hear this word, the first thing that will come to your mind is that it will have a degree of 2. Remember, like we learned in polynomials, that all the polynomials that have a degree of 2 are called quadratic polynomials. So when we say quadratic equations, it will be equations that have a degree of 2. Now, introduction to quadratic equations. So the quadratic equations are written as ax square plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a is not equal to 0. This is the standard form of a quadratic equation. Now, why this is important as a is not equal to 0? Suppose a is equal to 0, then this equation would be bx plus c is equal to 0. And this would be a linear equation. And therefore, it would not remain a quadratic equation. Therefore, ax square plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a is not equal to 0 is a quadratic equation. One example of this is 2x square plus x minus 300 is equal to 0. Okay, so this we've already done. This is the standard form of a quadratic equation. Remember this is important, right? And we can also say, like it is written in this statement, that any equation of the form px is equal to 0, where px is a polynomial of degree 2. Like I told you in the previous slide, that any polynomial for degree 2 is a quadratic equation. Right. Now, forming quadratic equations. So when we learn the chapter quadratic equation, it has two parts. The first part is forming a quadratic equation, and the second part is solving that quadratic equation. So when we talk about forming quadratic equation, what you would be given is, you would be given a word problem like this example, and you would be asked to form a quadratic equation and then solve it. So let's look at this example. So example 1 says, John and Jivanti together have 45 marbles. Okay, both of them lost 5 marbles each, and the product of the number of marbles they now have is 124. Find out how many marbles they had to start with. Okay, so now we would start with our favorite variable x. We would say that let John has x variables. So together they had 45 marbles. So Jivanti would have 45 minus x marbles, sorry. Yes. So now both of them lost 5 each. So this would be x minus 5, and this would be 45 minus x minus 5. So this would remain x minus 5, and this would be 40 minus x. And it is given that the product of the number of marbles they now have is 124. So this and this is in the product is 124, right? So x minus 5 multiplied by 40 minus x, this would be x, would give us 40x minus x square minus 200 plus 5x, which leaves us minus x square plus 45x minus 200. Okay, so now this is equal to, this is given as 124, the product, right? So we equated 124, and the final quadratic equation that we get is x square minus 45x plus 324 is equal to 0. Now when we solve this equation, so now remember that we learned in polynomials that it has a degree 2, right? What does that mean? That it will have 2 roots, at most 2 roots. It can have 0 roots also, it can have 1 root also, it can have 2 root also. So now when we solve this quadratic equation, the 2 or 1 root that we get would be the answer of this problem, right? Till now we have only learned forming a quadratic equation. In the next part, we will learn how to solve the quadratic equation. Okay, so this is how you form a quadratic equation. Now moving on, we have another example. This is also a question that might come in your exams. This says, check whether the following are quadratic equations or not. So just to give you a brief, what we have to do in this is, we have to open this equation and check if it is of the form ax square plus bx plus c and a is not equal to 0, right? So we write this equation here, we open it, x square minus 4x plus 4 plus 1 is equal to 2x minus 3. Right, so we bring everything to LHS, and finally we get this equation, that is x square minus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0, and it is of this form, and a is equal to 1, right? So yes, this is a quadratic equation, which is therefore the given equation is a quadratic equation. So this is the solution. This is the second example, and the solution is given. Please go through it. It is exactly the same as the previous one, right? And you have to come to a conclusion whether it is a quadratic equation or not. Now, these are some questions that you can practice at home, and hope you like this video. Let's see you in the next part.